the invisible battle. The reality of life is that we are always surrounded by opposition from our enemy, the devil. We know this because the Bible presents us with a great conflict between God and Satan, light and darkness, between good and evil in the spirit realm. And in the middle of this cosmic conflict is you and me. We are told in the Bible that this spiritual battle spills into each of our lives. There is therefore a call for every believer to be vigilant, alert, and not ignorant of this invisible battle. The Holy Spirit, through the Holy Scriptures, instructs us like this in Colossians 4 verse 2. Continue earnestly in prayer, being vigilant in it with thanksgiving. Other versions say, devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful. We need to have a devotion to our prayer life like nothing else. And we are also called to be vigilant, because the devil is always awake and walking about, waiting for the opportune time. The time that we are not alert and vigilant, so that he can accomplish his schemes and devour us. Be sober. Be vigilant. Because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. With this knowledge, can any one of us children of God afford to relax in their walk with God? Not at all. Instead, it is time for everyone to put on the whole armor of God. Ephesians 6 verse 11, put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. One day a great army of Syria with horses and chariots had come and surrounded the city dwelt by the Israelites. By the grace of God, there was a servant of God known as Elisha, who was always vigilant. He knew everything that was happening in the spirit world. Therefore, when the servant of Elisha arose early and went out, he was surprised to see an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. He became terrified and fearful of what his eyes were showing him. He knew that they were doomed and ready for destruction. We shouldn't be so quick to judge the servant, because I think this is something that we do a lot also. We look at the situations and the storms and the enemies that surround us in the natural, and forget that we have the Lord on our side. What this servant couldn't see was what had already been done in the spirit world. There was a great army of the Lord already prepared for their defense. Elisha had to intervene by praying to God to open the eyes of this servant so that he could see both those who were for him. And when his eyes were open, he was amazed to see a great army of the Lord protecting them from the attack of the Syrian army. 2 Kings 6 verse 17. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. All this happened through Elisha's prayer. This shows the power of prayer in our lives. I want to highlight this point. God has resources and power you know nothing about. Yes, the spot you are in currently looks like there is no way out. But you have God, whose ways are above your ways. The servant only saw the army before him, just like maybe you are only able to see the problems before you, not knowing the infinite wells of resources God has at his disposal. We see that the faith of Elisha's servant was limited due to the circumstances of what he could see with his physical eyes. However, Elisha could see what the servant did not. The servant was not aware of everything that was before him. He was not in tune with the Spirit, therefore he could not see beyond the physical. In the physical realm, it seemed like everything was against them, but in the spiritual realm, the situation was so far from the hopeless spectacle the servant could see. God was on their side. He had not left them alone, and Elisha knew this. The same experiences haven't changed in our time. Sometimes you and I go as far as the eye can see, and we see the supposed limitations, but my prayer and your prayer is to ask God, the Almighty, to give us the realm of the spiritual insight that was in Elisha. You see, if God is to grant this to us, we would walk through life with no fear, with no worries, with no anxiety, because we know in whom we have believed in. God is with you. God is for you. God is on your side. He is ahead of you. He is behind you. You are not alone. God has not fallen asleep. God still has the reins in your life. You may not be in control, but He is. You may not see the end from the beginning, but He does. Your Father in heaven is in control. Your perspective in life must be that of Elisha. We must pray to have our spiritual eyes opened, just like the servant. You must always remember that if God is for you, then no one can be against you. Prayer is the most underutilized resource in the life of believers. Prayer should not be our last resort. Prayer should be our first resort. The heart of all prayer is intercession. If you are going to pray, pray without ceasing. Pray until all worldly pleasures become fleeting. Pray in season and when the season has ended. Pray until your trials stop because they have become offended. If you are going to pray, go further and engage in prayer and fasting. Deny your appetites now and hold on to the everlasting. Be willing to pray even if your knees get tired. If you are going to pray, pray thy kingdom come. Pray for all and not just for some. Pray believing that you can command the disobedient mountain. Pray knowing that God's bounty is an eternal fountain. Pray. Pray and don't quit when it gets hard. Pray. Pray and keep going even when it gets cold. Pray. Pray and keep fighting because your life depends on it. Pray. Pray and keep believing that God is your omnipotent provider, no matter the cost. Keep on praying. You can't avoid the battle of life, but you can pray. If you are going to pray, pray when others stop and have fallen asleep. Pray so you can escape the darkness deep in your soul. Pray and beseech God to make you whole. Pray knowing that your weeping will end when the morning comes. If you are going to pray, pray. Hope and do not believe your fears. Pray. Trust in God and not your own ways. Pray boldly and do not shrink back from the task. Pray. Believe that God already knew what you would ask. If you are going to pray, pray knowing you have already received. Pray to God expecting a blessing because you believed. Pray and bind the forces of darkness and the pit of hell. Pray knowing that all will be well. God is waiting to delight in your prayers. If you are going to pray, pray fervently.